The night Kim Philby left Beirut did not feel important at the time. That is the detail people struggle with most when they ask me about it later. They imagine alarms, they imagine last-minute orders, they imagine someone realizing too late that a mistake had been made. None of that happened. The night passed quietly. And that was the point. I was not in Beirut. My role did not require proximity. Proximity creates urgency. Urgency forces decisions. I was in London, in the same windowless room where the Philby file now sat in administrative suspension, neither open nor closed, neither active nor resolved. By then, the system was no longer asking whether to act. It was preparing to explain why it hadn't. The message that Philby intended to leave Beirut arrived without urgency. It wasn't framed as a warning. It was framed as information. He has made arrangements. He has personal reasons. He will be unavailable for a period of time. Language matters. This was not escape language. This was absence language. I read the cable twice, not because it was unclear, because it was calm. Calm at that moment was the most revealing detail. No emergency meeting was called. That alone should tell you everything. Meetings create records. Records create responsibility. If the system had wanted to stop him, there would have been a meeting. There wasn't. Instead, there were small adjustments. A note circulated reminding departments to route any external inquiries through designated channels. A clarification regarding jurisdiction. A reminder about media protocols. Each message was polite. Each implied the same thing. This is not a crisis. This is a transition. I noticed certain desks became harder to reach that evening. Calls went unanswered. Replies came the following morning. No one was avoiding anyone. They were simply unavailable. Availability is a form of consent. So is its absence. Philby did not need help to leave. That detail matters. No one booked his ticket. No one escorted him. No one handed him instructions. He had been given something more useful: time. Men like Philby understand systems. They recognize when pressure eases, when scrutiny softens, when silence replaces instruction. That silence is not empty. It is permission without fingerprints. From Beirut he left calmly, not hurried, not disguised. As someone who understood pursuit was unlikely. The next morning the language changed. Not abruptly, professionally. Philby's name appeared less frequently. When it did, it was framed in the past tense. Former officer, previous associations, historical context. The present tense disappeared first. That is always the signal. I watched the file change, not its contents, its posture. What had once been treated as a developing concern was now being repositioned as an interpretive challenge. Different versions of events began to coexist. Some suggested uncertainty, others implied misunderstanding. None asserted flight. Flight implies pursuit. There was a brief window, hours perhaps, when action was still possible. Requests could have been made, signals sent, pressure applied. Nothing prevented it, except appetite. I remember one call distinctly. A senior figure asked, "Do we know where he is?" The reply was careful, not definitively. There was a pause. Then the conversation moved on. That pause mattered. It was the last moment where uncertainty could have been challenged. Instead, it was accepted. Accepted uncertainty becomes policy remarkably quickly. By midday, the internal language hardened, not into accusation, into distance. Philby was no longer framed as a man in motion. He became a subject for future review. That is how disappearance becomes manageable. You move it out of the present tense. I was asked to prepare a summary, not a report. A summary. Summaries compress. They smooth edges. They remove texture. They make events easier to circulate. As I worked, something unsettled me. The more neutral the language became, the more confident everyone sounded. Uncertainty creates anxiety. Resolution, even artificial, creates calm. The system was calming itself. By the end of the day, the question had changed. It was no longer "Where is Philby?" It was "How should this be characterized?" That question has many acceptable answers. The first does not. There were no raised voices, no accusations. Those come later. First comes acceptance. Over the following days, external inquiries arrived, carefully phrased, politely framed. Allies trying to determine whether they had been deceived or merely inconvenienced. Responses were drafted with precision. Each acknowledged concern. None acknowledged responsibility. No one asked me what I had seen. That detail stays with me. I had been present, not in Beirut, but in the rooms where urgency dissolved into procedure, where silence was negotiated, where inaction was given structure. Instead, I was asked to refine language, to ensure consistency, to remove contradictions. Tone became more important than accuracy. Tone is everything after the fact. It determines how events are remembered, how they are taught, how they are dismissed. Early drafts attempted nuance. They referenced competing assessments. They preserved uncertainty. They were returned with suggestions: streamline, clarify, focus on outcomes. Outcomes are safer than processes. The final version settled quickly. Philby became an anomaly, a lesson learned. Lessons imply improvement. Improvement implies closure. What struck me most was who shaped the narrative. Not those closest to the event. They were quiet, too quiet. It was others, distant, insulated, who determined how it would be remembered. Distance grants authority in hindsight. Public accounts followed. Books, interviews, documentaries, each promised revelation. None delivered accountability. From the outside, it looked like confusion. From the inside, it was remarkably consistent. Every version shared the same absence, the moment when intervention could have happened. That moment was never documented, not because it didn't exist, because documenting it would have required acknowledging a choice, and choices require ownership. People sometimes ask whether I feel complicit. That question assumes there was an alternative available to me. There wasn't. I had no authority, no leverage, only proximity. Proximity without power is a peculiar burden. You see everything, you change nothing. I think again of the handwritten sentence I once saw in the file. If he leaves, it will not be because we failed to stop him. At the time, it felt like resignation. Later, like justification. Now, like truth. Philby's departure was not a failure of detection. It was a failure of appetite, an unwillingness to confront what acting would expose. The system preserved itself. That is not a judgment. It is an observation. Systems are built to survive. They are not built to confess. Years later, someone asked me casually whether things would have been different if action had been taken sooner. I paused, not because I lacked an answer, because the answer no longer mattered. Acting sooner would have exposed the same questions, only earlier. Earlier exposure does not always reduce damage. Sometimes it amplifies it. That is the truth intelligence organizations live with. They are not guardians of truth. They are managers of consequence. History remembers the escape. It remembers the man. It debates motive and ideology. Those are distractions. What I remember is how easy it was, how quietly the system adjusted, how naturally it absorbed the shock, how quickly silence became normal. I was not there when he boarded the ship. I was there when no one tried to stop him. History records the outcome. I remember the process. There is a difference. This diary exists because process leaves no monument, no names, no dates worth commemorating, just a gradual shift from concern to acceptance. If you ask when the decision was made to let Kim Philby go, I cannot answer. Not because I don't know, because there was no moment to point to. That is how responsibility disappeared, not in a dramatic act, but in a series of reasonable steps, individually defensible, collectively irreversible. The man walked away. The system remained. That is what I witnessed.